some points from the remote hearings protocol. This is a public meeting and will be live streamed. Please only speak when invited to by the chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communications via the chair. Please ensure that your mics are muted when you are not speaking. When speaking, please be succinct and do not exceed the allocated time frames highlighted at the start of the hearing. If you have technical difficulties, please use the chat function in Google Meet to alert the meeting. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the subcommittee. Any persistent disruptive behavior will result in removal from the meeting. If there is more than one application, parties are advised that after each application is heard in turn, as set out in the agenda pack, the subcommittee will not retire after each application. Applicants and all other parties will be asked to leave the proceedings after the item is considered. Once all applications have been considered, any remaining parties will be asked to log out of the hearing. Please do so promptly so that councillors will have the opportunity to deliberate and make a decision on each application they have heard. Each party will be notified of the decision within 5 working days. Please could I ask the subcommittee to appoint chair?
That's the nominated chair. Sorry, I propose Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much, colleagues, and welcome again to our hearing this afternoon. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm sitting today with Councillor Emma Pluvier. Emma, you want to identify yourself? And Councillor Susan John Thomas. Ms. Amanda Nouth is our legal officer, and Mr. Gray, who's just spoken, is our committee officer. And we will go through the speakers for each item as we get to it. So there are no apologies for absence. Any declarations of interest? No?
No apologies, Chair.
None, Chair, no, none.
And then our hearing procedure. If you've got a paper copy of the agenda, it's set out in that. Page 17 onwards. But in summary, after a brief introduction from licensing, it's over to the applicant for each application to make their case. Then any responsible authorities, in this case our own licensing department, will be commenting on both applications. And then it's over to any objectors or other persons, as they're termed, to make their case. You have 5 minutes combined for those presentations, not separately. So if there's more than one objector, I'm going to have to keep you to a short interval each. At the end of that, there'll be space for a general discussion, and that can involve people suggesting compromises or amendments or conditions. And after we've exhausted the discussion, we'll invite the parties to sum up, and then we'll ask you to leave us while we move on to the second application. So I'm expecting for the first application tonight, which is Fixagon, 130 Bridport Place. The applicant, I can see Mr. Naras.
Yes, that's me.
Yeah, David Stewart from licensing. And the people who've given us notice to speak are Fiona and Philip G. Are you here? Yeah, I see Fiona. Richard Barnett, who was here.
Yes, I'm here.
You're down Ricky B, yeah. Okay. And Thomas Young. And Craig Mills.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Let me adjust my screen to get more people on mine. Now, I've not had notice from anybody else that they wanted to speak. With 4 people speaking on 5 minutes, I think that's going to take most of the time. Now I can see other people on the screen who have objected.
Yeah, so I also made a submission. Richard had shared this call invite with me, and if possible, I'd like to be able to speak as well.
Okay, strictly speaking, you have to give separate notice to speak from your original objection. But as we have 4 people already, I will take you for a minute, but no more than that.
Thanks, that's much appreciated.
Okay,
So,
Amanda?
Councillor Bell, I don't know whether or not the issue of the fact that he hasn't made a representation, though, will cause an issue.
He has made a representation.
Oh, he has, okay.
C24, Mr. Mock, to the record.
Yes.
Okay. So with that, Suba, could you please introduce the case?
Thank you, Chair. Licensing service are in receipt of an application for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for the Fixagon 130 Birdport Place for regulated entertainment and to authorize supply of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises, as stated in the agenda. The police have withdrawn their objection based on agreed reduced hours and conditions, and this document has been circulated. And in similar way, environmental enforcement have withdrawn their representation based on agreed conditions 18 to 23 as set out within the report. Representation remains from the licensing and other persons. The applicant has provided some additional informations which have been circulated. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
In terms of the police communication, we believe there's an error in terms of the opening hours on Friday and Saturday, because otherwise the police email does not make sense.
Yes, I highlighted that in a message to everyone before. I think you're correct.
So we're assuming that the police are agreeable to a 23:11 p.m. opening hour on Friday and Saturday. With that, it's over to you, Mr. Naras, to make your case for the application.
Okay, I'll try and keep myself succinct and run through everything as quickly as I can. I'd just like to speak a little bit to the space to begin with, as I feel like perhaps there's been a series of miscommunications that have caused some of the consternation around what we're doing. So the Fixagon is actually a space that we've worked in partnership with the council to bring online. We are a creative hub, which we feel is a space that's been set up with an ethos of being environmentally conscious, sustainable, and affordable. It's a community cafe that we hope is welcoming to all. We've partnered with a vegan sushi brand, and we hope that we're providing lots of different opportunities for people to kind of come in and share an open, warm space with us. Sorry, I'm slightly nervous and mumbling slightly. We're Rift. We're a production company that have done a large range of different projects, often in areas of low engagement, often in communities that are divided and fragmented. And what we like to do is create spaces where people can come together and through shared activities, create new bonds. And we see culture and the opportunity to share passions as something that can bridge gaps in our kind of fragmented society. First of all, I'd like to just turn directly to some of the concerns raised. We're not a nightclub or a music venue. We simply made the mistake of taking an old Facebook page that had a couple of thousand followers for a kind of outdoor performance space that we had in Tottenham, and changing the name of it to the Fixagon, which was because mainly we didn't want to have 0 followers when we opened. We didn't really clock that people would scroll back through our timeline and see people enjoying New Year's Eve parties or, Punch Drunk or the Royal Court or whatever. That's obviously a very different sort of activity to anything that would be appropriate in the space that we have. Secondly, the opening hours, that's entirely my fault. I put a late application in expecting to be knocked back. And when I kind of realised the consternation it had caused, I contacted Serena licensing and was advised that we'd have to pay for a new application to the council and also a new listing in the newspaper. And also it would knock the timeline back. So the best thing to do was leave this application in, allow it to play out, and adjust our hours accordingly. But I think those two things kind of came together with a combination of also no communication from the buildings managers who've been involved in the whole process of us taking the space and have known about our occupancy of it for ever since the beginning, ever since the council tendered for it. And that just created a perfect storm where a kind of a lot of assumptions were made, and we didn't even really know about it to begin with. So we have done our best to allay those concerns. We dropped off letters individually to all of the residents and invited people to come and have a conversation with us. And Felix and myself are always there and always open to conversation. And we had an initial meeting with Lucy, who couldn't be here, but helped to form that letter that went round as representation, has since sent, I believe, a letter rescinding her representation, having formed a relationship with us and come in and found out what we're all about. In terms of the representations from the local agencies, as you said, I think we've pretty much come to an agreement with everyone through reducing clarifying some of our aims, assuring people that we're not a nightclub or music venue, and adjusting some of our opening hours to kind of be more in line with what we'd initially hoped, and which fits with the council's local licensing objectives. Just quickly turning some of the concerns raised in some of the emails that I saw, and addressing the residents' concerns directly, I can only reiterate we're not a nightclub or late night venue. We use commercial activity to fund community activity. So at the moment we have Pilates for elderly residents. We have Action for Calais doing art classes. We have like a wide variety of community focused activity, but some of that is supported by us without funding. And the way we do that is by having commercial operation, and the sale of alcohol is part of that. We want to be able to do things like offer people a glass of wine after work, or a drink with a life drawing class. You know, it's not a focus of ours to be doing anything that's music led or DJ led, but rather to be supplementing activity by creating a kind of multifaceted offer. So in terms of the some of the concerns raised by residents, crime and disorder, and we have a menu of hot and cold vegan food that we are always offering throughout the time of service. We've got no intention to turn it into a party venue, and we understand that it's completely the wrong context for that. This is vegan sushi and a glass of wine while you're doing a workshop, not a nightclub. Public nuisance, it feels like there's a kind of historic problem within the building of noise and antisocial behaviour, and we were not made aware of any of that when we came into the space, so we're kind of slightly taken aback by it. But with the police, we've agreed that we'll bring our 4 outside tables in at 9 p.m, which is an hour earlier than the council's guidelines, I believe, and that we won't let more than 12 people congregate on those outside tables. We pay into the service charge, and I know that littering is another concern of the local residents. We're contributing our fairly sizable chunk to it, and our staff are also being proactive in terms of making sure that we're, you know, not letting napkins blow in the wind or cigarette butts accumulate or anything like that. And I feel like we have began to find our feet within the kind of all the infrastructure of the building and how it really operates. And we've got a good relationship with the staff there. And I feel like we don't, at the moment, haven't had any issues raised by our occupancy.
Okay, we just asked you to conclude.
Well, I can only say that Felix and I are always available to talk, and we've reached out to residents again and again. And we've had multiple meetings with over a dozen residents that have come from a place of fear to really supporting us, and we see them every day, and we can only continue to be an open space and an open ear for anyone who has concerns. We're part of the community, not invading it.
Okay, and just let me recap those 2 conditions you mentioned. Maximum of 12 people in the outside area at any one time, is that correct?
Yes.
and bringing tables in and rendering them unusable after 9 p.m.
Yes.
Okay. Colleagues, any questions at this stage to Joshua?
Just one, actually, because you did raise it. You said that, the provision of alcohol was part of the commercial operation to support the other things, but then you actually only referred to the sale of alcohol in terms of a glass with Pilates class. So that's not how it works, is it?
No, I mean, I think
what sort of operation? I mean, you will be opening quite a large premises, but not in a commercial area. So if I had a large space like that, I would rent it for events to raise the money to do my other activities.
Yeah, I completely hear you, and I think that would be an easy way of doing it, as we have a large capacity, as you say, and a lot of provision for fire exits and stuff. But we've actually limited our capacity to 60 seated and 80 standing, and I think the sort of events we're looking for are more like gallery launches and working with local artists. We're not really pursuing those. We have no desire to do anything high capacity there. I think we wouldn't be able to sustain it, and what we want to do is be there for a long time. We've done a lot of community work across London on meanwhile use, and often our frustration has been that we're there for a couple of years, we really embed and form links within the community, and then we are unceremoniously moved on. And part of our kind of the appeal to this, when the council originally tendered it to us in London Bike Kitchen, was that there's a possibility for a long relationship over multiple years. And I think that's something we build slowly rather than going for easy bucks, doing big events. It's not who we are or where we want to be.
Okay, but sorry to press this, but a few gallery events is not going to provide the kind of income that you're talking about. And also, sorry, forgive me, could also be covered by temporary event notices rather than a full license. So how just because you did say that the reason for the license is to have a commercial operation, so that
absolutely. I think that we want to start off initially just opening in the evenings around events, but I would like to be open Thursday, Friday, Saturday in the evenings. But I very much see it as a place for a glass of wine and some vegan sushi after work. I don't think we only have 2 members of staff on at a time. We're not a massive operation, and we're not. I understand where you're coming from, that it doesn't seem like a lot of money that is going to be raised through these things. But when at the moment we're only selling cakes and coffee and we're making it work, I think it's a valid income stream, and it's also like for different people to come together at different times. As much as we can work with Men in a Shed and do the guys coming down on Sunday or whatever and having cake and coffee, there's also just as much validity in a book reading in the evening where you might have a glass of wine afterwards, and that's some of the things that we're looking towards.
Okay, that's cool. I just wanted to clear that up. So
no, thank you. I appreciate the question.
Susan.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it is question to clarify the issue of music. You did mention that you're not expecting to have a DJ or something, but in your application, there is the element of live music. And I just want to find out, when you were saying live music, do you mean as part of being a curative hub, somebody coming in, a potential artist to play for few people, or are you planning to have live events that will bring people together in the venue?
So at the moment, the reason that's in the application is I think we see ourselves as a space where people can come together and share passions that are often engaged in the arts. So on Friday at the moment, we have a keyboard player and a harp, a girl playing harp, who come in and they play at lunchtime. And in the evening, we see the potential to, potentially have non-amplified music, kind of background sort of level music. But in our conversations with PC Atkins, we came up with the proviso of like nothing DJ led, and I think that that's kind of trying to make clear that we're not going to be promoting things as come and see this musician. Rather, we will do events, and some events might have some music. But like, I guess, I mean, that said, I guess the harp and the keyboard at lunchtime on Fridays is a music focused event. But I don't think it's not going to upset anyone, I hope.
So the no DJ-led events and no club nights is one of the conditions you've agreed with the police?
Yes, I suggested that because I felt like it would do something to assuage some of the concerns that perhaps we were trying to replicate what we'd done before in Tottenham. And I think, just to speak to the space in Tottenham before, the way that worked was we had 2 nights of music that funded 5 days of theatre, 10 community workshops a week that were free at the point of access, and generated 8 jobs locally. And although this is a very different setup, we have no desire to run big parties. There was something exciting in the idea of a commercially viable operation that was able to support community-based events, especially at a time when London is fragmenting, people are becoming increasingly wealthy or increasingly disadvantaged, and there's a lack of funding for social provision. We feel like this is a way that we can help to bridge some of those gaps.
And in terms of the hours for any other things other than sale of alcohol, for films, etc.
Sorry, I missed the end of that.
The hours for any of the other activities you've applied for, particularly for films, they would have to be concluded by the same hours as the alcohol sales hours. Yeah. So that would be by 10 p.m. Monday to Thursday, by 10:30 on Friday and Saturday, and 9:30 on Sunday.
Yes, that's right. With a 30-minute kind of cooling off period.
For a 30-minute drinking up and winding down time.
Absolutely. And I think also just it comes from our experience of like working in a residential context in Poplar Harker a few years ago. With Poplar Harker in Bow a few years ago, we had a space there and we had like a cold cut off to begin with, but it just meant that even 15 people leaving at one time is suddenly like everyone goes out and there's a chatter of excitement. Whereas like if we adjusted it to have a longer cooling off period and briefed our staff on kind of encouraging people to leave in a sensible way and over a longer period of time, and actually it was created a lot less impact on the local area.
Okay, thank you. I'll go on to Stuart, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief because I can see we've got quite a few people to hear from this afternoon. But essentially, my rep's on page B2, or at Appendix B2 of today's agenda, and I was just pointing out the location of the premises, that it's appears to be a cafe, shop, gallery, etc., community space. But I think the concern that I had mainly upon receipt of the application was the proximity to residential premises. I think they're directly above. I have since had a conversation with the applicant, especially since we received the agreement with the police. There are some things that me and Mr. Naras discussed just in relation to that agreement that wasn't in the agreement as the text that we received. So it's already been touched upon about the limitation of 12 people outside, as seating to be rendered unusable after 9 p.m. But we also talked about the proposed condition in relation to seated and standing, etc. And the suggestion from the applicant was that standing would only be permitted at ticketed events. So if you're minded to grant that, something we can explore in the we can explore that in the decision, and it's a condition which, if you're minded to grant the license, it could be attached as a condition also. So I'll just leave that there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Unless colleagues have any questions, Mr. Stewart, I'll move on to the other persons. I'll call you in the order of have you down my list. Please keep to about 2 minutes maximum. So Fiona, do you want to go first?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, thank you. A couple of points really. We still have major concerns about this application. None of the mitigations really get around the fact that we have quite unusual acoustics in this building. And that is due to the nature of the construction. Basically, it is highly reflective of noise, and all noise basically reverberates off, and even two people having a conversation outside can be heard all the way up the building. I would also point out that 12 people sat in the outside space is still 12 people directly outside somebody's living space. There is a flat directly above where that is, which from my perspective, I think that's still a lot of people, that's still a lot of noise, and there's also an issue around smoking and whether smoke will be wafting into people's flats. Nobody seemed to mention the issue of toilets here. As I understand it from the plans, there is a unisex toilet and one disabled toilet. And since we are talking about having capacity events of potentially licensing them for capacity events up to 80 people, I'm a little bit concerned that if the toilet facilities aren't appropriate, that we will be seeing urination or the like in the outside area, people going outside to relieve themselves, particularly if they've had a drink, which obviously will be deeply unpleasant for us living here. I would also like to understand sort of the issues around use, because we bought this flat on the assumption that the planning use allowed was for a cafe or gallery. I had understood that a bar and restaurant will be in a sort of different use class. And I would like to understand whether there has been an application for a change of use or anything like that. We've certainly not been privy to it. Two other things I would just like to add. The development has been recently targeted for crime. Last week, somebody cycled around Duo Tower and waited until there was an opportunity to tailgate. They got in and stole a bike. They then came back with their friends later and attempted to break in via a service lift. I think we're just going to be made more of a target for this if we've got a licensed late night premises, regardless of the nature of the activities. Yes, the only other thing I would say is that as far as communications to residents are concerned, the most recent one said to residents that they were only going to have late night activities until 10 p.m. on a Friday and Saturday, which does actually contradict the hours agreed with the police. I will point out that I think some residents haven't objected as a result of that. They've taken that in good faith. And obviously we're now looking at hours that differ from that. Doesn't to me seem quite within the spirit of the licensing process. That's all I'm going to say. I will hand over to the other people that are on the call for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Richard, Ricky.
Yeah, sorry, it is Richard actually. I think that's just on my Gmail account that I've got it at that. Look, I don't have anything particularly prepared. I wanted to hear what was said here. And I'm just going to kind of put a little bit of context around this for you if you haven't seen the area. You have two towers with a kind of mound in between, and the Fixagon is located at the base of one of them. This is a residential area, and I think that most of the residents, including myself, and I am the de facto lead on the Residents Association, feel very strongly that we welcome a business in that particular area. The concern that I have is I've heard a lot here about we have no intention, or we do not intend to have a nightclub. We don't intend for it to be noisy. We're going to do our best that when people leave, they don't make a lot of noise. We're going to do our best that people don't smoke too close to the facility and walk over to the park. There's a lot of good intention here. The reality is that people will behave as people do. And as such, a facility serving alcohol up until am I right in saying 10:30 or 11 o'clock is not in keeping with a residential building of the type that we have here? And that's my main concern, is that again there's an intent and then there's the reality. I also want to kind of reiterate what Emma said. Sorry, Emma, I don't know your surname, otherwise I would use it. But what you said, which is that the owners of Fixagon are looking to support other activities with commercial activities, which means alcohol. The more alcohol you serve, the more you have, and the more you can offer these services. So that, to me, it doesn't quite work And I think if you look at the advertisements that the Fixgon owners already have out there, they're offering this up as a venue for music, serving alcohol already, although the license hasn't been granted. They're my main concerns that I would appreciate you taking into account.
Okay, thank you very much. Craig?
Hi, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. I'll try to be brief because I think a lot of people have said very similar things. I think the first thing I want to just talk about is it is a residential area. The council itself is planning to build more residential homes for low-income families directly opposite the venue. And so I question whether this is somewhere you want to have a licensed premises in a building with residential people living in it. And so I am concerned about the amount of noise pollution there'll be from that. As Fiona pointed out, people have their balconies, including me, directly above the venue. That's my part of extension for my living space. So I think that will be a nuisance to myself. I think there are lots of questions around the purpose of this venue, and as people have pointed out, a lot of confusion around what it's been. I appreciate that Josh has set out quite a picture of that, but that's not been clear at all during this application process. And that goes from notices posted at the very start of this, where notices were posted for the application and the license, contradicting times there, which then went to the application that was made to the council, contradicting times that were shared with residents in a newsletter, contradicting times we're being told about now. This doesn't paint a very good picture of a business model that is thought through, but also that people are competent to hold a license, in my view. I think also there are questions then around what is the purpose in terms of some of the letters that have been sent, and the letter itself that was circulated this morning, and this all goes to information being supplied very late, says we want to allow our space to spill out into the park and beyond. So I question there, why is it limited to 12 people? Is that really going to happen? And is the intention here to supply alcohol for the surrounding area? And then I think coming to the actual part about alcohol, I'm very glad that Councillor Pouvier raised this. The model that's being presented simply won't work. If you want to use it to fund, then you're going to have to sell alcohol in bulk. That's not one glass of wine as you're doing Pilates. And so I think perhaps a temporary event notice might be a more suitable route. I think just to summarize, there are too many uncertainties. I think I don't understand why there are so many uncertainties still at this stage when you're considering granting a license. Thank you.
Okay, Stephanie?
Hi, yes, I'm going to be very, very brief. I second everything that Fiona, Richard, and Craig have said. The concern is, this is a residential area and license, confusion on the timings, the difference in the application. And also, I think one of the additional concerns I have is that, I don't wish the business ill, but, should anything were to happen, then if the license granted were to stay, then, we could find ourselves in, with other business owners that may not have such good intentions as Josh does. So, yeah, so that's just briefly what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, and finally, Dennis.
Yeah, I think my thoughts have been well articulated by others. But just from my perspective, I think the intentions of Fixgon are actually quite laudable. But I think the fundamental question is going to be, is this space, this particular venue, right at the ground floor of a otherwise purely residential building, whether that is an appropriate place to grant an alcohol license, which any future business operator can also take advantage of. And some points that I want to impress upon you is, again, the issue about the acoustics. I don't know if you've been to that space before, but it does have a very peculiar quality where even street level noises travel up very directly to the point where if two people are having a conversation on the ground level, it can be heard, for example, where I live, above the 10th floor. So I shudder to think what 12 people gathered outside would generate in terms of the amount of noise. And whilst there's certainly intention from Fixgon to reduce the amount of noise and be sensitive to the residents in the area, we also hear that they will be hosting events which will be drawing groups of people, if not large groups of people. We also hear that there is a commercial objective behind serving alcohol as well. And there may come a point between the commercial imperative where it becomes inconsistent with their ability to reduce the amount of noise and disturbance there. So I think the conclusion is that there is an irreducible amount of noise, which, given the sensitivity of the area, can really affect the quality of life of residents there. There is perhaps a second point to note about the nature of the area, is that it's directly across a primary school, and it's also just down the road from a secondary school to be open as well. So query whether it's really appropriate to have an alcohol serving venue in this location. And the final point I want to impress upon you is that this is, in recent times, not an area that residents feel particularly safe at. There has been a number of phone snatchings, and as we heard, there were a number of break-ins just last week. And we do feel that if there is an alcohol serving venue here, then that would increase the attractiveness of this area and this building in particular as a target for further crimes, and creates opportunities for people to create an unsafe environment for people living around here. So I think, to sum up, an alcohol serving venue is just fundamentally inconsistent with the character of the area, which is one that's purely residential, with lots of young families and young professionals who are quite sensitive to the amount of noise and disruption that could be caused by this area, this sort of operation.
Okay, so some of the main issues were, how do we prevent this being used in a different way by a different operator? And the answer to that is we put on conditions that attempt to make it difficult, not impossible, for it to be used in a different way. So many of the conditions that we are intending to put on will move towards that direction. I'm echoing a bit. I think Dennis, could you still on perhaps? Thank you. I think it's better. So most of it will be us trying to resolve by way of conditions any potential future abuses by another operator. Colleagues, Councillor Pluvier, do you have any questions to any party?
Yes, I just wanted to know from the applicants what the planning status is.
Joshua?
We haven't applied for a change of use. I think that we felt like what we were doing falls within what we have at the moment, but I'll talk to Felix about that. Yeah, at the moment we haven't applied for a change of use at all.
And the hours?
The hours, how do you mean the hours? Sorry.
Are there hours attached to the planning condition?
Not within not the contrary of what we're doing. Is it an appropriate time to talk to some of the things that people said, or do you want to?
I just wanted to check that you have. I just wanted to know what the planning hours were, and whether you've. It was raised. That's all. So.
Oh right, yeah. I believe we're within our hours. Yeah.
Okay, but you're not sure about the
change of use.
I think our use is A3, which is cafe, restaurant, but with also A2 and A1. So I think we would be within our planning to have this application go through.
Okay, it would have been helpful if you were completely clear about that.
Sorry, that's my bad.
However, since we have no objections from planning, normally we deal that by way of an informative. Susan.
Thanks, Chair. Just want to pick some of the things the objectors mentioned, and 3 of the residents mentioned this issue around noise and the vibration in the building. And the first thing, I know you said there is no going to be DJ or background music, but is this premise, is there any soundproof there at all?
Our understanding from the plans as built is that the hollow space above the curved arch includes an acoustic membrane. There seems to be a problem with kind of lateral sound flow in the building between flats, but we've not had any complaints in terms of the activity that we've had so far. In terms of the tables outside, I think that that was something that was suggested to us, and we would actually be quite happy to bring them in earlier, or whatever we can do to create as easy a dispersal policy for the residents, and as little impact as possible. We have a noise reduction policy and a dispersal policy, and we felt that using essentially the exit that points directly at the Rosemary branch and the pub over the other side of the canal would be a way of funneling people away towards potential transport hubs, but not into the immediate aegis of the building. I also think that, although not disingenuous, it is a vibrant area, and there are lots of other places, some of them with residential above them, that are providing places for people to go locally. It's not like we're landing somewhere where there's none of this sort of activity. We're part of an ecosystem that's been there for a long time, and far before those buildings were built.
Did you have a second question, Susan?
Just not quite, Chair, but I take it that there is an issue and there is no soundproofing there. Again, just going back, if there's going to be live music there, then that would be an issue for residents. And the other thing that I want to pick up, you mentioned, Joshua, in your introduction, that at the moment you've only got you've got just 2 members of staff. And I'm wondering if you're going to have tables and chairs outside where it might be 12 people can make, in particular when people are relaxed and drinking, they can make a huge noise. And again, sorry, colleague, I'm not sure if I missed this. You didn't actually say anything around how you're going to manage that to prevent that noise and that antisocial behavior impacting negatively on the residents that live above and around the building.
As part of our conversations with PC Atkins and various other agencies, I discussed using a noise reduction policy, including things like bringing the tables in. And as I said, I'm happy to bring them in earlier, but also having all of the doors closed to the building. They're triple insulated. We do regular kind of sound checks, even on just our cafe activity. And that's something that we'd implement as a part of our policies. I'm happy to work with the council to set noise levels that seem appropriate. And I don't think that there's any need for anything that we're doing within that space to be at all audible outside of it. That's not our intention. And if that is something that needs to be written into the license, then that's absolutely something that we'd be happy to do. We've worked a lot in a lot of different. We've worked on the 13th story of a residential tower block before. We've worked in a lot of these environments, and I think that we're adept at managing these situations. I think it's about the systems you put in place, and I think it's about how intelligently you do things. And I feel like we're happy to listen to concerns if there's if there's problems with egress or people congregating, then we can add to our noise and dispersal policies to try and overcome some of those issues. But I don't think that I don't think what we're doing at the moment is causing an impact, and I don't think that what we will do in the evening will contribute to antisocial behaviour or anything else.
You just mentioned that you will be willing to reduce the time the tables and chairs are outside. What sort of hours or time will you be looking at?
Initially, I said that we perhaps wouldn't put them back outside after. Our plan is to, and I know everyone seems to think our business model won't work, but we've been doing this stuff for a long time, and we find ways to make it work. And I think that our plan initially was that we'd shut the cafe in the afternoon at 4:30, in line with what we're doing now, and then have a period of probably downtime most days where we would kind of reset, and then if we had anything going on in the evening, that would be when we set up. So I mean, we could even look to not put any tables or chairs out in the evening after 6 p.m. or something like that. But I mean, yeah, the 9 p.m. came from conversations with PC Atkins. He suggested that 10 o'clock was the council guideline. And I said, I don't think we need to go to 10. Like, why don't we try and get ahead of it and be proactive and bring them in slightly earlier?
Do you want
Thanks,
to pursue
Jay.
that?
I'm done. Yes.
All right, so a condition about not causing noise nuisance to the nearest noise-sensitive premises would be acceptable.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that one of the things that we've asked the building managers to do is allow us up onto the upper floors so that we can do regular sound checks. And I think that's something that, with the help of the concierge in the other building, we'd be able to facilitate throughout any events that we were holding. Okay.
Now, I heard a lot of process issues come up during the other person's representations, issues about how communication has been conducted, and about the notices, etc. Now, to be clear, those are process issues and they will not affect our decision in the end. It's always better if the process is, very smooth and very clear, but in practice it rarely is. And it's not unusual for changes to happen as license applications go through. So I'm afraid if you think that's all unusual, it's not. It is the way we often have to do business here. And it's not unusual to have late changes, I'm afraid. That does happen. There's some other issues about worries about crime and disorder, which I've heard. Unfortunately, unless you can prove they're caused by this premises, they aren't really things we can take into consideration.
Just sorry to interject. Just on the crime and disorder thing, I do think that there is also something to be said for activity within a space, and that is a public space. And our experience of working in Tottenham was that there was actually a noticeable drop in antisocial behaviour locally to where we were, because people that are doing nefarious things generally don't want to be around people that are doing not nefarious things. So although I hear the residents' concerns, and as I feel like I'm part of the community, even if not everyone else feels like we're part of the community, we'd be actively seeking to reduce any kind of possibility of crime. And part of us having CCTV and a visible presence, I feel would lead to a reduction in this eventually.
Emma. Emma, do we not unmute?
Sorry, Thanks, Chair. Oh God. Yes, sorry, I'm sure you've told us, but how long have you actually been operating in this premises now?
So the process of getting the space started in November 2019, and we've been severely delayed by the pandemic, but that was in collaboration with the council and Life Story, the building operators, and the developers, even all the way up to the architect. But we only opened our doors about eight or 9 weeks ago, after several sets of setbacks. And
you haven't run any tester events?
No, we're opening. We're just operating in the daytime at the moment. We have done a couple of things in the evening that are filming or private kind of training with our staff, things like that. That's a couple of local organisations have done book readings, but we haven't done anything with the provision of alcohol, obviously. Or
it's not obvious to me. So forgive me, it's not obvious to me because it would actually enormously strengthen your position if you had run temporary event notices without problems, and that does tend to be because temporary event notices are very cheap and not difficult to get. It would have helped your case enormously had you done that, and I just wondered why you didn't. Experienced operators, you must know this, because we're operating in a void here, and that void could have been avoided if you had done that.
I completely hear what you're saying. I just think that we were quite taken aback by the kind of the level of opposition that potentially people that hadn't even spoken to us found they could voice against us, from you know, and I think that we just felt like we would go through this process first because it was the best way not to upset anyone further. But I completely hear what you're saying, and I wish I'd thought of that.
Amanda.
Councillor, just to say that Craig Mills and Ricky B have been waiting, plus Dennis Mock, to speak. I think they've got their hands raised, and also to ask whether or not you wanted to ask the applicant if they wanted to consider a capacity condition.
Isn't that in the police list? 60 sitting, 90 standing.
Yeah, I've seen that, but I didn't know if you wanted it worded as that or just as a capacity, overall capacity for the premises.
I think it's either. I think it's either or. It's
yeah,
not
that's why I was just
combined.
wanting to clarify with you whether or not which you were minded to agree to. Or
I think that was kind of because we felt like something, I don't know, like a book launch or whatever, or a gallery opening might not be suitable to have everyone sat at tables. So we put 2 capacities. I mean, obviously both of them are significantly less than the potential capacity for the space. But that's just what we felt was kind of reasonable and would cause would cause a minimum of impact.
So 80 is the absolute maximum under these conditions, yeah?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
80 standing.
So, yes. Can I just add one thing? We don't only have 2 members of staff. We just when we're open in a cafe in the daytime, we only have Felix and I there, and then 2 people making coffee and serving cakes and stuff. And obviously, were we to do things at different capacities, we would staff it appropriately.
Okay, I'll bring some of the other persons back in. So, Richard.
Yeah, just a quick one from me. There's been a lot of discussion about seating outside, and this has been raised, and the mitigant to the concern there is to take in the seating at 9 o'clock. But you should all be very aware there are a number of benches immediately around the development and around the Fixagon area. So if the concern is people will congregate with the alcohol served inside of Fixagon and that removing the tables will mitigate this concern, it will not. They are fixed benches outside of the entire residential area, because it was never thought when it was designed that alcohol would be served on the premises and that there would be a concern that people would be sitting outside and potentially making noise late into the evening, you know, beyond the 10:30 time frame. So I just want to make that very clear to you that with the best will in the world, Fixagon will remove the tables at 9 o'clock, but there are plenty of places right in front of our building on our development where people can continue to sit outside and then potentially cause a nuisance. I just wanted to make sure that everybody is clear of that.
Yeah, and those places are there regardless of what happens to this application.
Just to speak to that slightly very quickly, yes, I'm aware of those spaces, and one of the things that I put into the agreed with David Atkins, PC David Atkins, that was that we'd have no open off sales. The only reason we've applied for any off sale is that there's the potential for us to sell some of the products that we support. We're passionate about supporting local products. We want to have local suppliers and have a small kind of shop concession type thing, you know, around Christmas and that sort of thing. But as we have a no open container policy off site, any alcohol that was sold by our premises would not be able to be consumed away from our premises in those areas. We'd ask our staff to make sure that that was clearly communicated to anyone buying anything. Outside of that, people congregating and drinking on the public benches, I mean, you know, if they're related to the activities within our premises, obviously we would approach them and say that this wasn't appropriate. But passing public using facilities, I don't think that's.
It doesn't happen now, and having a license that facilitates it allows that to occur. It doesn't happen right now.
That's great. No, absolutely. I mean, there was a few complaints about it a few weeks ago, but my other point on that is that this premises has always had a restaurant license, so it has had the capacity to sell alcohol. It's not like it was a you know, it's not like it's a flat being turned into a bar. It's always been had the potential for the sale of alcohol, and I don't think that like we're doing anything disingenuous by applying for something as simple.
I have it in writing from the developer that was a requested change, so it wasn't always the case. And there's plenty of us who bought the apartments here on the condition that was not the case. So I'm not sure that would stand up to scrutiny.
I think probably that's not something I can speak to, but perhaps you'd like to talk to the developer or whoever did that.
Okay, I'll move on for a second. Craig.
Thank you. I'll just come in quickly maybe on that last point. I think there's a question, isn't there? What is the planning permission for that building? Because that's not being able to be clarified. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of other points. The venue itself is an all-glass venue. The walls are glass. That glass extends to our lobby. So our lobby, we will have all of the noise and we'll be able to see everything that happens in the cafe. So I just wanted to point that out. In the door that he mentioned, which he would direct people to leave, that's next to the entrance to our building and the lobby that all residents have to go through. So if that's the exit you're proposing that people use, I think there's an issue there for residents. And then I just have a question actually about, is there a need for a license for off-premises sale? And a question actually to Hackney Council, because the information is not available on your website anymore. There is only one other venue near us which is licensed to sell alcohol. It's located in the Gainsborough Studios. It's a small cafe. It'd be interesting to know what conditions were placed on that cafe, because that might be applicable here. But unfortunately, no one seems to want to provide that information to any local residents, despite us asking for it. But I think that's for you as councillors to request that information and see if there's a parallel here that can be drawn on.
Isn't the Rosemary branch a lot nearer in Gainsborough?
Well, the Rosemary branch is a slightly different venue, isn't it? That's an actual public house. It has no residential area above it or around it. The other is a small cafe in the Gainsborough Building Studios.
Property's backing onto it.
It's in Islington.
Yes, it's not exactly the same though, is it, in that it's not located in a residential building. I think you're not quite looking at the context of this. This is a premises directly below residences because it's located in the same building. It's surrounded by residential areas on all sides with no other commercial facility around it. So I think you're not making the same comparison. I'm offering you a comparison slightly up the road, a cafe which you have licensed, and I think it would be worth looking at the conditions that that cafe has to see whether they might be applicable in this situation. Thank you.
Craig, I suspect, in fact, because it was quite some time ago, it will have far less conditions than we're considering in this one. Dennis.
I just want to quickly respond to a point that was made earlier about what evidence we have of the impacts of the venue on crime and disorder. I mean, given that the venue has been operating as a daytime venue only without any alcohol sales, it's hard to, develop any evidence of how it's going to impact the area once it actually does start doing that. So to require the evidence right now is an impossibility, given the context. And actually, one other point about directing the flow of people towards the Rosemary branch after the venue closes. One thing about the building as well is that it's the residents are putting around the concentric circle in a circle. So they are flats directly facing towards the Rosemary branch direction as well, and any patrons coming and going via that way would have a direct impact on the noise experienced by flats which face in that direction as well. And as well mentioned, given the sensitivity to noise in that area with all the hard surfaces out on the street level, they can be heard distinctly within the flats. And in our experience, even with the Rosemary branch, which is all the way across the canal, distinct conversations can be heard. It is disruptive to sleep, and it is impacting mental health as well.
Okay, Felix.
I just wanted to add that we do directly back onto an off-license venue, and it's definitely something which we have observed, that people purchase alcohol from there and drink it in the square outside where we are. I think it's probably worth noting that our activity, we have been operating for 2 months now, and this has acted as a test scenario for how our operation continues and our attitude and our communication with the local residents. and we have been constantly monitoring how our operation impacts on the local area. And we have noticed, like, the fact that we're in occupation has meant that people can feel more secure and confident walking around as the space is more used, and we just anticipate this will extend into the evening as well. We don't anticipate any activity here which will be significantly more, well, which there won't be any activity here which is more disruptive than what we currently have, and we feel confident about that. So I just wanted to flag up the license, off license, which is directly next door to us.
Okay, Mr. Chewett, did you hear anything that changes your view?
Not so much, Chair. I guess it's I guess from my point of view, it's more about if a license is granted, it's just the conditions that are attached, and just to protect those residential premises around it, and the use of the outdoor space. That was what I particularly was concerned about. I think obviously we don't know how much soundproofing is within the fabric of the building, etc. But obviously, if there is quite a lot of use or activity outside, that could itself have a negative impact.
Councillor Bouvier, any questions? Councillor John Thomas, anything else? Amanda, do you think there's anything we should have asked about that we haven't asked about?
I just wanted to clarify, in the event, if should members consider approving it, would they, would the applicant, I haven't seen in the conditions whether or not they would agree to like quarterly meetings or something to assist with residents' complaints and concerns?
Absolutely. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I suggested as part of our kind of policy documents was that my mobile as DPS was available as well. So along with having regular meetings, there's a direct line of communication. Should any local residents have any concerns during any event, that they could talk to me directly and not find themselves having to do the runaround to try and get an answer about anything.
And the contact details are available to members of the public at all times?
Yeah, I'm happy to put my mobile number out there for everyone to have.
Well, an email address would be sufficient.
Oh, right, okay, yeah, no, that's better. Yeah, no, yeah, genuinely, I do want to be a point of contact for people that do have concerns, and I think quarterly meetings are a really good idea and something we'd be happy to host.
Sorry,
Okay.
Chair, actually I forgot.
Just 2015 already agreed with the police, isn't it?
Chair, sorry, I forgot something. It's
Yeah,
just
please.
around the reduction in the time. If we're mindful to grant this application, I think there is, or I got a sense that Mr. Nara said they won't mind to the reduction into the hours. They will have the tables and chair outside from 9 p.m. Just to clarify that, if we want to do that as part of the objection or part of the conditions.
Yeah, my initial thing was that we wouldn't have them out in the evenings. I think that then with the kind of, I just went with the kind of the conversation I had with PC Atkins, and that was what ended up being put into the proposal. But yeah, we're happy to be flexible in terms of those, absolutely.
Okay, so you wouldn't object to taking them in by 7 o'clock, say?
No, absolutely not. And the building is that, although it is glass, it's triple insulated. Like it's the highest spec you can possibly get, as the residents know. And although I know that their windows are open, I believe if we're sealed, I think we can guarantee that we won't be audible outside the remit of our premises.
Amanda.
Yes, I just wanted to ask for clarification again, that how often are they planning to have the events? Are the events going to be regularly every week, or is it, because I wasn't sure from the paperwork whether or not it was just
We're I mean, we're working with different groups at the moment, looking to program other activities. But until we've had these conversations, we can't really move forward with that. I think Thursday, Friday, Saturday is kind of our focus. Obviously, you know, if that works and there's no problems, then being able to open on Wednesday or whatever, we could expand out of that. But that's our initial thing.
Felix, Felix, please.
I just wanted to add to that we already do have a program of events, including yoga and sketching and events which don't require alcohol. And that's definitely our intended direction for this application. Just represents the wanting to expand our offer out. We're not looking to program in large scale events. I just wanted to make that really clear. We just want to expand our offer into the evening to be able to offer alcohol alongside our existing activities. We're not trying to program in lots of big events.
Emma.
Sorry. One of the residents have suggested actually pulling the hours back, and they suggested that you'd offered perhaps in a letter 10 o'clock. I mean, were we to grant the license for 9 o'clock, would that be acceptable to you as a way of ascertaining how many problems there were, and then you could apply for a fairly simple minor variation if there were no problems?
I'm happy to let Felix talk to that.
I think we would. I think the application for 11 o'clock on Fridays and Saturdays is, you know, we're not intending to open until that time. It's just to give us the assurance that we are able to. We obviously are keen on having alcohol as part of our provision, and if your decision is that it's an earlier time than 11 o'clock, then we will have to go forward with that. However, we hope that we've given you the confirmation and confidence in our operation and our intentions, that won't be necessary.
I think it's, can I just say, I think it is quite difficult to get an understanding of what this will feel like. We have no idea because the premises haven't been open past 4 o'clock or thereabouts, presumably, at all. And so we, you know, there's a sort of range of things being offered here. It's not a restaurant. There is a food offer. It's not a bar. There'll be activities. The events will be there, but they're not going to be loud dance events. So I guess that's why I was suggesting, because it's actually have no, you know.
I understand. I think
I have no image of, you know, of what's actually going to happen there at all.
Sure. I think just to speak to that point, I think we have been operating for 2 months in the way that we intend to continue, and the daytimes will be the absolute focus of our energy and activity, and trying to provide the series of workshops and community events that we've promised to the council. I think our intention with the alcohol license is to have the capacity to open in the evenings. It's not to suddenly open in the evenings every single day. It's just to have the capacity. I understand that might not give the assurance because we haven't done those events already, but we have been operating and had a really good relationship with the members of the building that we do come into contact with every day. I think it's worth noting that we haven't spoken directly to anyone else in this meeting that's come from the building, and that's really put us in a difficult situation, because if we had, we might have been able to address these before submitting the application.
Can I just, this isn't particularly running on from that, but can I just also ask a question? One of the residents who did take time to come and talk to us was Lucy, who actually I think came up with the text that the other residents copied and pasted into that email. And her communication with us has been phenomenal, and she couldn't attend today but has sent letters of support that have been shared with everyone, I believe, but she was under the impression that someone might be presenting that for her. I just wondered whether that was something that was going to happen or not.
We've had whatever written information has been circulated. I'm not sure I've seen any particular letters split by a person, but I can't rely on any new evidence at this stage, even if there is any.
I believe she presented it during the. She was emailing it during the 28 days when representations could be taken on board, and it was sent to licensing.
Okay, well, I don't intend to introduce anything new at this stage. If it's been to us, we'll have seen it and noted it. But by itself, of course, it is one representation, even if she has some role in coordinating others. I can see, again, Councillor Pluvier's point that opening with a slightly shorter timetable for selling alcohol, give you time to prove yourselves and come back with a record having operated in the premises, and that might make it more amenable to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that that's the I guess maybe 9 is a little bit early. If there was the facility for it to be 10 o'clock, that would allow us to do some of those after work things. By the time people get back from work and it's 7:30, they come down, they'll only have an hour there before they'd have to leave. So perhaps we could meet in the middle and say 10, but we'd be happy to do that. And if there's some way that perhaps at the next quarterly review, if this is granted, that could be an agenda point to talk about whether it's working or whether there needs to be any further variation on that.
It could certainly be a agenda point. That would be entirely up to you and the residents. But a formal application would have to follow on some point. Well, unless anyone's got any new issues have not been raised before, I'm going to move to summing up. So I sum up in the same order as the original remarks. So Joshua and Felix, do you want to go first?
Sorry, you broke up for me then.
I take summing up in the same order as the original remarks. So Joshua and Felix, do you want to go first?
Sure. I just think in summary, we are positioning ourselves with openness and honesty and trying to be as open and honest about our aspirations for the space as we can. We have alcohol sales as part of our business model, also as part of the community. Lots of people who want to come and enjoy activities also enjoy a glass of wine or a beer and aren't necessarily hoodlums who are going to trash the area. I think that we have worked in this context for a long time, and we've worked across multiple sites with capacities from about 20 at the top of Hoxton Street 10 years ago to over 500 in Tottenham, and we really do know what we're doing, working in residential contexts and other contexts. We're always going to be open to conversations, and we hope that we can become part of the community. We hope we can bring the community together through shared events. And as Felix said, the residents that raised concerns and have come and talked to us no longer have those concerns. Many of the residents do support us, and although I listen to everything that everyone said, and I take on board everything that everyone said, I'm happy to be responsive to everything that everyone said. The only thing I could really beg everyone who is here, who is a local resident, who hasn't been to see us, come in and have a cup of coffee and have a chat, and perhaps you'll get to understand who we are a little bit better.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Jewett, next.
Thank you, Chair. I've nothing further to add at this stage. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona.
Nothing further to add at this stage. Thank you.
And Richard.
I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Okay, great. Craig.
No, thank you.
Dennis.
Yes, I was just going to say that there's been a number of assertions made about what residents can and can't hear from within the flats, and frankly, knows that except for us, the residents. And I can assure you that there is an acoustic clear to me, based on the discussion we've had today, how the conditions are going to help with those issues, other than to reduce the hours of operation for Fixagon. And given we still don't have a clear image of what of how they're going to operate, perhaps it will be prudent to err on the side of caution and limit the hours of operation to 9 p.m. But I'll leave that to your discretion.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we had Stephanie originally, but I believe she's left us. Can't see her on my screen.
Yeah, apologies. She did text me. She had to drop.
Okay, that's fine. Emma, Susan, any final clarification needed? No, Amanda, any final clarifications? With that, thank you all very much. Apologies for my voice. It does tend to give out about this time of the afternoon, some strange reason. What I'm going to do is, if you leave us now, we'll come to our decision hopefully later this afternoon, and you can ring the licensing service from tomorrow morning onwards, and they'll give you an outlined decision, and we'll try and get the full written decision written up in about 5 days, get out to the parties.
Just want to say thank you to everyone, and thank you for all your time.
Thank you so much.
And just two procedural things. First of all, we had some minutes from the 8th of July. The three of us were present on that day. Are we happy to approve those? They're in our pack.
Yeah, there's just, it refers to Rolling Rock, one of them, and it's Rolling Stock.
Right, so page 23, we could amend that, Peter, to Rolling Rock, Rolling Stock.
Thank you, Councillor.
With that, I'm going to take a 5-minute break. So Thomas and Paolo, see you on the call.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so if you do a 5-minute break. So by my clock, it's now 15:16, and I'll return to 15:21 roughly.
Okay, great.
So if everyone could call them back in 5 minutes, please.
Thanks.
Susan, are you back with us? Hello.
Good afternoon.
Okay, we'll move on to Cassie Photo, 58 Sanding Road. Everyone got the microphone off, please? Well, I think you're causing feedback.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Your microphone off, please.
Yeah, so good
Can
afternoon.
you turn your microphone off, please?
Excuse me?
Can you turn your microphone off? I think you're causing feedback.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Can you turn your microphone off, please?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay, I think that was causing some feedback on my end anyway. So we're on to the application for Casa Photo, 158 Sandringham Road. And the persons I'm expecting to hear from are Paolo Albanese, the applicant or the operator of the premises, and Thomas Isketch, who I know owns the property above or nearby. And Mr. Stewart's representing the election service and making representations on their behalf. And I think everyone else is familiar with the participants and procedure. So, Suba, could you briefly introduce the case?
Thank you, Chair. Licensing service are in receipt of an application for variation of premises license under Section 34 of the Licensing Act 2003 for Casa Fofo, basement and ground floor, 158 Sandringham Road, to extend the hours of supply of alcohol and late night refreshment in the garden area and to remove condition 24. Representations remains from licensing and other persons. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now, Paolo, it's over to you to make the case for up to 5 minutes.
Sure. Thank you everyone for being here today and for reviewing our case. So we are a fairly new restaurant. We only opened in 2019. So we are a family business, completely own-funded. I'm just gonna explain the concept of the restaurant because maybe that's gonna provide some context on the reason why we would like to extend the opening hours in the garden. The concept of the restaurant is that we only supply a 7-course menu. That means that customers, when they come to our restaurant, they are welcome to enjoy a journey with us. This journey of a 7-course menu means that customers sometimes are at our restaurant between 2.5 hours, 3 hours, sometimes 3.5. That's just to allow them to enjoy the full meal. With this in mind, obviously, the fact that we might welcome a restaurant sometimes at 8 p.m. That means that obviously, if they were to finish the meal, they will need to stay past 10 p.m. At least in the garden. The other thing to note is that from Wednesday to Friday, we're not open for lunch. We only open for dinner. We only offering lunch on Saturday and Sunday. The reason being is that it takes a long time for the team to prepare the food. This is why we are unable to be open for lunch. With the extension of the license in the garden, that would allow us to welcome more clients, or even the one that are coming sometimes at 7:30. That means that they can enjoy their meal without us having to ask them to leave. I do appreciate that maybe in the past there's been instances where customers have been staying in the garden longer, but that's being currently taken care of. We are not allowing customers in the garden past 8 p.m., which means that obviously recently we've been able to ensure customers are left by 10 p.m. The fact that we can allow less customers in the garden in a premise that is quite small obviously means less revenue for us. And with the fact that we've also been impacted by COVID, and as I said at the beginning, we are completely self-funded family business. We obviously want to ensure that we are able to continue being in this business for as long as possible. Something also to note is that the price of our menu is currently £45. That means that only a certain type of clientele comes to our restaurant. Also, something additional to note is that the restaurant has been awarded a Michelin star only after 1 year being open. And we hope that the Hackney community is proud to have us there, as we know it is, because we have many local customers that regularly come to our restaurant. They've been very supportive throughout the pandemic. So the reason why I'm here today is that obviously I wanted to take our case in front of the committee, and also I'm very much happy to have an open conversation with Thomas, the neighbor of our restaurant. So I'm more than happy to listen to him and see how we can obviously try and ensure that he's happy to live close to our restaurant. So we are very open-minded. We are very much open to listen today to any feedback, any additional comment. And if I can provide any further information, obviously more than happy to. Thank you.
Okay, at some stage, I'm going to have to return to the photographs that we've been sent. And in fact, some of them appear to be in breach of the current license. But what I propose to do is to take the other parties and then come back to that discussion phase. Councillor Bouvier, do you have any questions at this point to the applicant?
Yes, to the applicant. Sorry, just for clarification, because she's laid out what the restaurant is now. We have the current license, and we have the layout, which shows the ground floor as having a service bar and a takeaway area. So I'm assuming that her premise has changed, and it's no longer a takeaway.
No, we do not do takeaway. So basically, we've actually acquired the license from a restaurant that was there previously, but not the concept of the restaurant. We do not do any takeaways.
So can you just line for me, just so that we understand that the business now, it operates in the base. You have indoor premises in the basement and on the ground floor for patrons. And what is your current capacity indoor?
So we can allow a maximum capacity of 40 customers across the 3 rooms per sitting.
So that's including the outside?
Yeah.
Of which the outside ones is how many?
Excuse me?
So how many are outside?
Outside, I would say less than 10, 12.
Okay. So it's a quarter of your customers' space. It's just because the plan we've been given doesn't give us any idea. So that's helpful. Thank you.
No problem.
I think there is an issue in that there is capacity limits within the current license. but they appear to be based on the old user, and they're significantly higher than we're being told now. So current capacity limits say 8 persons outside of the front, 15 indoor ground floor, 38 basement, and 40 in the rear area. So Paolo, are you telling us it's actually a lot less than that?
Excuse me?
It's actually a lot less than that, figures that are on the current license.
A lot less than that, less than 40.
Currently it says 40 in the outdoor rear area.
40 in the outdoor area now.
Right, so this license is outdated based on the previous occupier.
Okay, yeah, no, we definitely don't have 40 occupier in the garden.
Okay, perhaps we need to get into that later on. Ms. Bluvia, any other questions? Councillor Fitzgerald Thomas, any questions to the applicant?
Just a quick one in terms of the garden. I know this address is Sandrian Road, so the garden is the other side to the back, facing residential area at the back. Is that correct? Okay, thanks.
So we move on, Mr. Stewart, you will make representations, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the representation is Appendix B. I will keep it brief because it is quite a straightforward application, really, isn't it? Just to remove that condition restricting use of the garden till 10 p.m. So in the council's policy at LP6, external areas and outdoor events, the licensing authority will look to normally restrict external areas and outdoor activity to 10 p.m. And then we ask for the applicant to demonstrate comprehensive control measures to ensure the promotion of licensing objectives, in particular public nuisance objective. I think the issue with this particular application is that where we do have some allegations of non-compliance, that has actually led to complaints. So we would need the applicant to be able to demonstrate to us that, you know, if this condition is to be removed, you know, what measures will be in place to stop any further complaints and negative harms on those local residents that live nearby. And at the moment, I'm not aware that anything's been offered. So maybe that's what we'll get to in the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, apologies for my voice giving out. So we move on to Thomas. Representations, please.
Okay, great. Thanks to give me the opportunity to present the reasons why we objected here. So just a brief background. So we moved to this area in May 2017, just before our kid was born. We knew the area before as a family area. There are some kind of shops with residential units above. One of them is a dry cleaner, one is a supermarket. There was a restaurant before that we have been many times before, and they were always keen to get people out of the garden area at 10 strictly. It was people were not sitting there for dinner, just going out for smoking or something like that. So we felt quite comfortable moving there with a new family. But yeah, then the owners changed, and immediately kind of there was a change in the attitude towards that. So from the opening event that they were holding for friends, they were kind of ignoring the licensing terms and having friends stay late and being noisy outside. We were in contact with the owners by email and personally, and were always reassured that they would take measures to stop that from happening, but this never happened. So we also complained to council and noise app and so on multiple times. After the last lockdowns, things even kind of took a further turn to worse when the owners started building this tent or conservatory or whatever we would call it outside in order to have permanently seat guests outside for dinner seatings all year round. And at that time, they started having guests sitting outside until after midnight. And they took reservations the last reservations for outside, the bookings for outside that took were for 9:30, if I'm not mistaken, which, as Paola was explaining, is a 2.5 hour time for a meal, but as they knew, leave it until midnight for them to finish the dinner at least. So on top of that, obviously, people were sitting even longer, and I provided images and also some videos of guests sitting outside well after midnight and having noisy conversations, and that's also kind of demonstrating the amount of noise that we have in our apartment. So this is a courtyard that's facing residential units. The noise is traveling through the courtyard, and it's affecting, so our bedrooms are facing that, so that's our bedroom, child's bedroom, and that's affecting our quality of life. Our kid is often awake until midnight, or wakes up around this time because of the noise, and also the cleanup takes them half an hour. So often we were only able to sleep after 1 a.m. So basically, to sum it up, it's a residential area, and just having these opening hours are just not compatible with this location. And the owners previously were ignoring us trying to reach out. They were previously ignoring licensing agreements, and so in that sense, I believe it's not compatible with this location here. Thanks very much.
Okay, so Paolo, coming back to what I raised earlier, we have had a series of photographs submitted as part of the papers for today, and a number of them appear to show people outside well after the time you're allowed.
I do apologize for that. I think that obviously because of the pandemic and the fact that not only us have been heavily impacted, I think also we had a few clients that probably were staying longer than usual just because they were excited to be out again. Nevertheless, the team has now this completely under control. Customers are not allowed in the garden past 10 p.m. The last seating is currently 7:30 p.m. maximum, so that the garden is now being cleared. I've seen pictures, of our staff in the garden that's been taken in August, and that was purely to clean the space. But since then, there hasn't been any customer in the garden.
Well, I can see some photographs that appear to be staff, but there are also photographs here that are definitely customers.
Excuse me?
I've seen photographs that appear to be staff, but there are also some photographs that are definitely customers.
Yeah, that was, I think, back in July, but then in August it was only pictures of our staff in the garden with they were placing orders for food for the day after they were cleaning.
Mr. Chu correctly quoted our policy.
Sorry, can you turn your mic off, Ms. Albanese? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Mr. Chu rightly quoted our policy, which is to keep it to 2,200 hours unless the applicant can demonstrate comprehensive control measures have been implemented that ensure the promotion of licensing objectives. And to my mind, at the moment, I can't have the confidence that you've done that.
I think what we would be more than happy to do if we were allowed to remain open past 10 p.m. We would not have our music on at all. So hopefully, that would limit the noise. And then, obviously, I know that the team will be perfectly capable of, ensuring that the customer behave past 10 p.m. I do appreciate that maybe, like 12 p.m. might not be accepted. So I was wondering whether 11 p.m. would be something that our neighbor and the team would consider. at least to allow us to have customers sitting at 8 p.m., which I think is quite reasonable.
I'll let him come back on it in a second, but as I recounted, our policy is not after 10 unless you can demonstrate to us that you are good at managing it. As yet, I'm afraid you haven't done that. Thomas, you come in at this point?
Yeah, I had a question here to the licensing committee, which is firstly, does this the current clause limit the outside use to 10? Does this apply to staff as well? That's the question. And then I also had a comment back to what Paolo was saying, that from the onset of this current procedure, there were no guests sitting outside after 10 p.m. That this is not true. And I think some of the pictures are showing guests outside, and we do not take everyday pictures. But in the meantime, even after we submitted this document, we have taken some images of people sitting outside, which I'm happy to provide after 10 p.m. So this is not something that stopped, and staff is not simply sitting outside to clean or make orders. They are sitting outside having meals. They are drinking wine outside. They are chatting outside. And one of the videos I sent was after this licensing procedure started, where they obviously were also having quite noisy conversations outside as well.
I mean, speaking personally, I would need to be more convinced than I am at the moment that you have the intention to fix this going forward, particularly as we've heard. Unfortunately, I couldn't open those particular files you sent us myself, but I take it that it's your evidence to us that it's still happening. And how can you convince us that you'll do something different and better in the future?
I mean, I'm obviously our intention to get along with our neighbors. So, I'm happy maybe to have this reviewed later on. So maybe, we can demonstrate that we can have this under control. And as I said, we are more than happy to, continue having an open conversation with whoever is our neighbor and has to make any representation. I'm more than happy to have my email out there. So yeah, if today I cannot convince anyone that obviously being open until 12 p.m. Would just to allow our customers to enjoy their meal. I'm happy to have this reviewed in a few months' time.
Okay, and I think you don't mean a review, you mean making it into a temporary application. So it would be for a fixed period, after which the issue would come back.
Sure, I'm happy to come back here.
In our terms, review has a different meaning. So, Emma.
Sorry, I don't think I quite understand all that. But it does seem to me that from what you've said, a 7:30 or possibly an 8 o'clock sitting in the garden is still feasible. Certainly 7:30 is what you actually said yourself. A 7:30 sitting is feasible till 10 o'clock. And extending to 11 doesn't allow another sitting. It just allows for a few people to come later, but it's a relatively small part of the operation. It should be manageable. And pushing for later hours is pushing to have 2 sittings. And I don't see that that's feasible with the complaints from the neighbours. So I'm not confident. And also it has to be said that any outside space should not be used after 2200 hours. And when you knew there were complaints, to have staff sitting out there after those hours is it's careless, and it doesn't instill confidence. So I have to say, I don't feel we're getting much further in terms of this application.
Susan.
Thanks, Chair. Is actually in the line of Emma, and I know Ms. Albanese, US, talking about wanting your customer to enjoy their 7-course meal. And while you are saying that, you're not thinking of the 10-year-old or the 5-year-old that are sleeping in the building next to the garden. Why we want your customer to enjoy their meal, which is good. I don't think it is good enough to use that to stop your neighbors, in particular young people, from having a good night's sleep. And importantly, even without having the license to use the space, you have been using it now until midnight. Can you just imagine when you now have the license, what is going to be happening? So, like my colleagues, I'm also very uncomfortable, and this is not about not getting along with your neighbors. It's genuinely about looking the balance of, yes, we want to support your restaurants as a business in Hackney, as well as we want our residents to have a good night's sleep. So I'm very, very uncomfortable. Probably it's good to advise your customers, if I'm going to spend £45 on a plate of food that I don't want to rush, then I'll get there at 8 o'clock rather than coming in at 10 o'clock. Thanks.
Thank you. I think it's very well said. I'm not sure there's any other issues that we need to really go over. Has anyone got any new issues they want to bring up? Amanda, do you think there's anything we should have asked about we haven't? If not, I think we're ready to move to summing up. So, Paolo, do you want to go first and say anything you wish to make the case?
Yes, of course. I mean, as I said, I do apologize for what happened in the past. I know that the team has been trying to control this, and I will personally, also adjust it with the team. What's been said today. I'm sure we can prove in the coming months that an improvement will be made, and I think it's already been made. And then, if we manage to prove that the team can perfectly control nuisance in the garden, I would like to, obviously get the subcommittee opinion in a few months again. And in the meantime, anyone that wants to reach out to us at the restaurant to express any concerns, I'm more than happy to address them. Thank you.
Okay, I think you've taken the point, but some of these breaches happened in August. With some proof of, so they are recent. It hasn't been months and months. It has been a very recent policy of allowing staff to go out there and hang out after you've closed serving.
I'm sorry. I knew that in August it was literally only the team cleaning and taking orders in the garden. But again, I would reiterate that noise should not be happening after 10 p.m.
There are photos here, 20th of August, 12th of August, and your team are clearly not cleaning. They're sitting there enjoying themselves.
I don't think they're enjoying themselves. I know that they've been taking orders. I know that they also had a recap of the evening. But
and Chair, can I come in? Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong. When they said the use of the garden is up to 8 or 10 o'clock, that including the staff as well. So it's not for, so the staff are using the garden. So I don't think there is much of an excuse saying the people that are sitting there are member of staff. The place is not meant to be used either by staff or by customer.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, Mr. Chu, do you want to say anything summing up? Are you muted?
Oh, thank you, Chair. I've nothing further to add.
Do you still want us to apply the policy about eyesight areas?
I would say so, yes. If I'm still yet to hear any comprehensive control measures, especially given that we've had complaints in the past.
All right, thank you, Thomas.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I just want to thank for your consideration and all the comments that I heard and clarifications. Thanks very much.
Okay, does anyone need any final clarifications? If not, Paolo, I'm afraid you probably heard the direction of the discussion. It seems highly likely we won't approve this today. That doesn't mean we won't approve it ever, but it does mean you would need to demonstrate to us better control measures, and over a period, I would say, of at very least 2 months, preferably longer, and before we consider this again. But you can't put in that for the application.
But Chair, bearing in mind that the policy is 10 o'clock and that you know, there are residents living nearby, so I mean, I can see the control measures could be very difficult. This isn't just if you abide by these rules, we'll let you have extra hours. That isn't what we're saying. The requirement would be to show that by going beyond our policy hours, you could make sure that wasn't disruptive for the people around you. And I caution any optimism on that, given the circumstances. That's all I want to say, you know, because I think it's really important we don't give you the wrong idea here, because the policy does say 10 o'clock and you've had neighbours complaining. And I personally can't see, I mean, you've built a structure and that hasn't done it. So I would be very cautious of expecting that you can find a way to make this okay with your neighbours. Okay, just so, yeah. All right, it's not about proving that you can abide by rules. It's a bit more than that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. You put that a lot clearer than I did. With that, if I can ask the outside parties to leave us, and we'll get on with our deliberations. Thank you again for attending today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.